Hello and welcome. I'm Ijoma Onyato. Tonight, gunmen kidnapped Justice Abdul Dogo of the Federal High Court Akure. Ondo State demands 50 million naira ransom. Edo and Ondo State police commands begin manhunts for kidnappers. More ministries and heads of departments and agencies continue defense of their budgets at the National Assembly. Minister of Finance insists the country is not in a debt crisis. Tales of more flood disasters in parts of the country as residents of communities in Ogun, Imo and Bayelsa states call for help as they battle rising floodwaters. And US lifts sanctions imposed on Turkey over its offensive against Kurdish fighters in Syria after Russia agreed to deploy troops along the Syrian border.
On business news tonight, Nigeria's consumer confidence index rises to 3.8% within the third quarter of 2019.
On sports news tonight, Nigeria's Minister of Youth and Sports approves release of funds to remit overpayments wrongly credited to the Athletics Federation of Nigeria by the IAAF.
And from Abuja, federal government orders that payment of all arrears of a new national minimum wage must be completed by the end of the year. A federal high court judge, Justice Abdul Dogo, has been abducted by gunmen who are already demanding a 50 million naira ransom for his release. Justice Dogo of the Federal High Court, Akure in Ondo State, was kidnapped along with his driver along the Akoko axis, a border area between Ondo and Edo states, on their way from Abuja to Akure. Sources say the kidnappers contacted family members and officials of the Federal High Court in Akure and Abuja to demand the ransom. The spokesperson of the Ondo State Police Command also confirmed the incident, but said it did not happen within his jurisdiction. However, the Ondo State Governor, Mr. Rotimi Akeredolu, has urged the Ondo State Police Command to synergize with its Edo and Kogi counterparts to ensure the early release of Justice Dogo. Governor Akeredolu, in a statement, noted that the conflicting narratives on the location of the judge's abduction could disrupt proper intelligence gathering. Now from security to the National Assembly, where the Minister of Finance, Mrs. Zainab Ahmed, says Nigeria is not in any debt crisis as being speculated in many quarters. At a public hearing on the budget organized by the National Assembly, the Finance Minister insists that the country's debt profile is still within reasonable limits. Our correspondent Linda Akigbe reports. All right, we'll hear from Linda a bit later on what's transpired at that budget defense. But let's stay with the legislature now. And the Debt Management Office says no external borrowing will be done to fund the 2019 budget because the budget has to end by December. The Director General of the Debt Management Office, Patience Oniha, made the clarifications during the budget defense at the National Assembly. According to her, only domestic borrowing will be done. And so far, 660 billion naira has been borrowed domestically. Our correspondent Terry Ikumi reports.
As the budget's defense sessions wind down, more ministers and heads of different departments and agencies continue to show up before the various National Assembly committees to defend their budgets. The Director General of the Debt Management Office in her budget's defense responds to questions on the debt service performance of the 2019 budget.
We did say in 2019 there was a provision for 1.6 trillion naira of new borrowing. The reality is that it's only the domestic borrowing that will be done because the budget has to end in December. Okay, so that external borrowing of 802 in the 2019 budget, we are not raising it this year. It will be raised next year.
She speaks further on the domestic borrowing so far.
New domestic borrowing for 2019 is 803 billion naira. As at October 2019, we have raised 660 billion. Okay, that leaves a difference of 142 billion naira, which we will raise between now and November.
If you got less than 4 million last year...
To defend the budget of the Ministry of Information before a joint committee of the National Assembly is the Minister, Lai Mohammed. He speaks on the proposed allocation to public enlightenment and campaigns against fake news, hate speech, among others.
The enlightenment campaign on government policies and programs, testimonial series, national campaigns and advocacy against fake news, insecurity, farmers' herdsmen clash, banditry, kidnapping, etc., which is ongoing. And I think 155 million envelope was given for that, sir.
The Joint National Assembly Committee on Works also receives the MDAs under the Ministry of Works, among whom is the Surveyor General, who, like most of the MDAs, laments late release from the 2019 budget.
About 5 more agencies.
And during the budget's defense of the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, the lawmakers questioned the capacity of the agency to effectively carry out its duties.
How can a large country like Nigeria only have just 8 sniffer dogs, for example? How can a large country like Nigeria, the agency that is saddled with that very crucial responsibility of fighting drug trafficking and drug abuse or what have you, how do you expect that agency to just have 2 personnel to a local government?
With just days left to conclude the budget's defense, as plenary is expected to resume on the 29th of October, will the budget's defense sessions warrant an extension? Terry Ikumi, Channels Television News.
Well, we can now bring you a bit more about what transpired at the National Assembly, where the Finance Minister is insisting that there is no debt crisis. Let's just see what she has to say.
There were reports at the weekend that the World Bank has approved a $3 billion loan request for the expansion of power transmission and distribution networks in Nigeria. This is one of the loan facilities Nigeria has been chasing to fund critical infrastructure in the country. Nigeria's debt profile currently stands at approximately 25 trillion naira. In the 2020 budget, Nigeria plans to spend 2.4 trillion naira to service both local and foreign debts. But as the federal and even state governments pursue credit facilities to fund infrastructure, there is concern among Nigerians that the country is steadily entering into a debt crisis.
Presentation to National Assembly in a good time.
But the finance minister gives the country a clean bill of health at the National Assembly budget public hearing.
Nigeria does not have a debt crisis. Our total borrowing today is just under 20% of our GDP, while the multilateral institutions project for an economy our size to borrow up to 50 to 55% of our GDP. What we have is a revenue problem.
But even as the finance minister assures Parliament that the country's debt profile is nothing to be scared of, the Minister of Justice and Attorney General of the Federation, Abubakar Malami, warns that Nigeria is currently in the grip of judgment debt running into billions of naira arising from bad cases, contract failures, damages and fines against human rights abuses. He makes this disclosure during a budget defense meeting with the Senate Committee on Judiciary and also asked the committee to appropriate an extra 30 billion naira to his ministry to service the debt annually.
At the home front, judgment debt kept mounting, have all conspired to constitute suffocating legal challenges with attendant mounting financial demands in servicing them.
Lawmakers appear favorably disposed to the minister's request and advise him to send it to the National Assembly in form of a bill, as the money is not included in the 2020 budget.
In certain respects,
the Minister of Justice is also requesting approval from the National Assembly that a commission of 2.5% of a total recovered loot should be given to the Asset Recovery Unit in his office to service bills arising from judgments. Linda Akibe, Channels Television News.
To environmental issues now, residents of Magboro area in Ogun State are crying out about the rising floodwaters that have taken over a large section of their community for the past few weeks. Some of the residents who spoke with Channels Television say the floods keep rising due to the opening of the Ogun River Dam. Many of them now access their homes and businesses in a canoe, a situation they say is risky.
This is what residents of Gao community in Ifo local government area of Ogun have been going through since the recent floods. Going out to get their daily bread has become difficult because of the situation. Residents have to wait patiently for a boat to convey them to dry land. Parents take the risk of boarding canoes with their children out of the area to school.
Anytime the canoe comes back here, everybody just try to rush, they break the queue, and which is causing, sometimes when we get to the water over there, the water separates the canoe away from the bridge.
I don't feel okay flying a boat to school.
The classrooms are scanty because many cannot surmount the challenge of getting to school.
Just for the flood, my friend cannot come to school.
At times when I get inside the school, I normally go around with my torch to check whether there are some reptiles, even though we have to kill some. And the children are always fear, they are always afraid.
All they ask for is swift response to the situation.
We have problems with the flood almost every year here. And we don't know how we're going to sort it out, because there was a time we constructed this bridge and it cost us a lot of money. That we use canoe and we are paying 15 naira per head before you can move in and out. And you see some cars cannot move out and some cars cannot move in. So the solution is from the government. If the government can help us to extend the bridge.
We think it's damp this thing. Government should do something about it.
What the people of Gao community in Magboro can only hope for is that this natural disaster disappears as soon as possible.
We'll bring you a situation update on what the flooding is like in other parts of the country in the course of the bulletin. But let's just look at the judiciary now. And the Lagos High Court sitting in the Igboshere area has ruled that the confessional statement made by a suspected kidnapper, Chukudumeme Onwamadike, popularly known as Evans, was voluntarily made. Justice Adedayo Akintoye also held that Evans admitted during a trial within trial to determine the veracity of the statement that there were no chains on his legs and no knife was held over his head while he was making his confessional statement. He described the allegations of duress made by Evans as an afterthought and that the defendant had failed to prove any of them. The court subsequently admitted as exhibit the confessional statement made by Evans and adjourned further proceedings to November the 28th. Before that date, the third defendant in the case, Linus Okpara, is expected to tender before the court a certified true copy of his medical report preparatory to his request for bail on medical grounds. Meanwhile, the trial of music artiste Aziz Fashola, popularly known as Naira Marley, on 11 counts of conspiracy, possession of counterfeit cards and fraud, has commenced at the Federal High Court sitting in Lagos. In his testimony before Justice Nicholas Ewibo, the first prosecution witness, Nuru Buhari, an EFCC forensic expert, testified that information about stolen credit cards had been retrieved from the musician's laptop. He said website history recorded and recovered from the device showed that the top 5 most visited sites dealt with buying and selling stolen credit card information. The court admitted in evidence the request made by the EFCC for the analysis of the Apple laptop and an iPhone allegedly confiscated from the defendant, along with the forensic laboratory report prepared by Mr. Buhari. Counsel to the defendant, Olalekan Ojo, however, asked the court for an adjournment to enable him closely review the testimony before cross-examining the witness. Justice Owibo has adjourned to tomorrow, October the 24th, for cross-examination of the witness. Now, suspected serial killer Gracious David West, who is on trial in Port Harcourt, the Rivers State capital, has pleaded guilty to killing 9 women in different hotels. The defendant admitted to killing the women at his trial on Tuesday at the State High Court before Justice Adolfo Senebeli. Prosecution counsel Gladys Imego told journalists that it is in the best interest of the state for the Ministry of Justice to take over the prosecution of the suspect. Justice Senebeli ordered that the defendants be remanded in a correctional center and adjourned the matter until November the 18th. In part two, after the break, President Buhari holds bilateral meeting with his Russian counterpart on the sidelines of the Russia-African Summit in Sochi. That's in a moment. Please join us again.